You want the meeting? Showing up.
Can you start meeting after that we play video? Yes, I introduce.
Is my screen visible?
Yes, yes.
So सबना लाइव कर दो.
Yes, we are live. Sound नहीं आ रहा.
Sound's not coming?
नहीं, sound नहीं आ रहा.
Okay, let's maybe. Is it audible now?
No. No.
Namaskar, I am Dr. K.K. Agarwal. The question asks this, that Ma Saraswati is the goddess of education. Can she be scientifically described? Yes, in Advaita philosophy, the God is within you. You try to become like that God. You try to acquire those qualities of God. And if Saraswati is in you, then Saraswati is Mother Saraswati, Ma Saraswati. What is peculiarity of a mother? If there are two children, if she has two children, one is weak and one is strong, she will look after the weaker one. Similarly, as a teacher, when you are taking a class, you focus on the weakest student and slowly build up for the persons who are good in studies. So therefore, Ma Saraswati, wearing white sari. Whiteness means truth. Therefore, never teach anything which is confusing. Always believe in truthfulness. Then she has a small rosary in the hand. Don't muck up things. Rosary means repeatedly you try to mug up things. It is required, but to a smaller quantity. Small Vedas book. You cannot learn only by reading books. Therefore, only by reading books or by mugging up, it's not possible to become a good scholar. You require is a big veena. Big veena basically means skills procedure. You need to have repeatedness. You need to have practice. Suno, samjho, jano, karo. Unless you practice, whatever you hear, you listen, convert your listening into your knowledge and knowledge into wisdom. Unless you do that, your education is incomplete. And she's sitting on a swan or a lotus. Lotus means detached attachment. Learn to be detached yet attached. And the Hans, basically, the swan or the Hans basically means the power of discrimination, Vivek. What a swan does it, if you give him water and milk, he will drink the milk and throw the water away. And that power of discrimination needs to be acquired by all students and need to be the basic characteristics of a good teacher. So therefore, a good teacher is the one who understands the basic principles of Ma Saraswati.
Hello and welcome all to this lovely evening. And what a wonderful start, I would say, that we got to hear from none other than Dr. K.K. Agarwal and his video that was posted by Heart Care Foundation. And so we are gathered here today for this running series of Heart Care Foundation and their Perfect Health Mela, which was initiated by Dr. K.K. Agarwal. And the best thing is that the people attached to him are keeping his good work going. We remember him and we thank him for being himself, being always guiding us. And we all know how every Thursday logging on to the Perfect Health Mela series with some school or the other, we could gain so much insight from Dr. K.K. Agarwal's wisdom and his experience with COVID. Unfortunately, he's not here, but then his work is proving himself. जैसे हम बोलते हैं कि वो बिल्कुल अपने काम से अमर हो गए, तो इसी तरह आप लोग भी हमसे जुड़े रहे. And it is very, very heartening that to see so many participants here today. We are also, along with these 140, 150 participants in the Zoom room, we are also connected through YouTube and Facebook of Heart Care Foundation. And I'm sure that the topic that we are going to discuss today, which is health as practice, is going to be enjoyed and will be beneficial by one and all. When we talk of health, जब हम health की बात करते हैं, तो सिर्फ एक physical health आंसर नहीं है. हेल्थ के साथ बहुत सारी और तरह की हेल्थ जुड़ी हैं. बॉडीली हेल्थ तो है ही, बट मेंटल हेल्थ, इमोशनल हेल्थ, सोशल हेल्थ. And unfortunately, during this COVID period, all of us are faced with these issues. Not only dealing, taking care of COVID, keeping ourselves safe, but also कि हमारा दिमाग कैसे काम कर रहा है, हम अपने emotions को कैसे deal कर रहे हैं. और जब हम छोटे बच्चों की बात करते हैं, स्कूल में जो हमारे पास बच्चे आते थे, आप सोचिए कि उनके पास कितने सारे venues होते थे जिससे वो बातें कर सकते थे. They had friends, they had teachers, and now they are restricted in their houses with their parents. And it's just that we have seen that children express and articulate best when they are with their peer group. तो जब ये हेल्थ की बात शुरू हुई तो हमने सोचा कि घर में बैठे हुए जो बच्चे हमारे हैं उनको फिजिकली एक्टिव बनाना भी जरूरी है. I will now introduce myself that I am Pooja Gupta. I am principal of Spring Day School. We operate from Ashok Vihar in Delhi. And I am also founder of a physical education after school program, which is called Hop Skip Run. Hop Skip Run की शुरुआत इसी तरह से हुई कि हम देखते थे हमारे बच्चे ज़्यादा प्ले स्टेशंस पे, वीडियो गेम्स में, पबजी एक बहुत ज़्यादा वो फेमस गेम हो गया था, इन चीज़ों में ज़्यादा इन्वॉल्व रहते थे. When we were growing up, we used to play miscellaneous games in the evening, bandi chain, pittu, stapu, and so many more, and maybe just pakadam pakadai, and we used to enjoy a lot. But unfortunately, धीरे धीरे ये कम होता गया. बच्चों का सोशल इंटरैक्शन, फिजिकल डेवलपमेंट एंड एक्सरसाइज कम होती गई, एंड डिजिटल काम ज़्यादा हो गया. विद कोविड ये और ज़्यादा प्रॉब्लमैटिक हो गया, क्योंकि अब तो स्कूल भी नहीं जाना है, स्कूल भी कंप्यूटर से अटेंड करना है, फिजिकल एक्सरसाइज तो पता ही नहीं कहाँ जा रही है. तो इसलिए वी थॉट दैट वी विल कम टू यू through this workshop or a training or maybe just a seminar that we can call it, and discuss about health and how we can take care of our health. I welcome here all the officials, including Sapna ji from Dr. K.K. Agarwal's Healthcare Foundation, for making, and also other officials who must have joined us. I welcome my friend and co-principal, Mrs. Neeraj Vora. She's the principal of Titiksha Public School, and together we will be taking the session forward. I welcome all the teachers, all the staff members, and these lovely students that I can see on the screen, जो कि आज टाइम निकाल के टीवी छोड़ के हमारे साथ बैठे हैं हेल्थ के बारे में सुनने के लिए, हेल्थ के बारे में बात करने के लिए. And also I welcome Mr. Ankit Ahuja. Ankit Ahuja ji is the founder of Red Comet Films, and he is going to be chairing our session for today. Ankit Ahuja ji का एक बहुत लंबा सा अच्छा सा मेरे पास राइटअप आया है और वो मैं पढ़ने लगी तो शायद बहुत टाइम निकल जाएगा, बट मैं आपको बता दूं कि अंकित आहूजा जी ने शाहरुख खान के साथ काम करा है. So I think that is going to be very interesting. Let us see. I am sure he is going to also give us some experience how it was to work like with the legend himself. And also I welcome the speaker for today, Mr. Varun Shetty, and he is the founder director of Invictus Performance Lab. And with that, I would not like to take up more time and give the platform to Mr. Ahuja. Ankit ji, please take it forward. Welcome you all and hope you enjoyed the session.
And thank you, Mrs. Gupta. Thank you very much for the kind introduction. Well, my experience, first to answer your question, my experience with Shah Rukh was amazing. It was like a documentary that we were filming with him, and he took us around the world, and we followed him around, and it was a lot of fun. And he's a very witty guy, so it was an interesting, experience. Well, now I'm going to just first welcome Varun. Thank you, Varun. Thank you for joining us today. You are a high performance coach, and you've been into this line for a long period of time. I think it also stems from the fact that you were always a sportsman, while you were, I think, growing up in Abu Dhabi as well. So if you can just set the context about our conversation today, and maybe we'll be able to impart some very important performance coach based knowledge to all the attendees today. So without further ado, I'll have Varun take the floor.
Good evening to one and all. I want to thank Ankit as well as the Heartcare Foundation of India, and actually commend them on this great initiative of theirs with the Mela the health Mela that's going on. I've been called today to talk on the topic of health as a practice. And before we go into that, I'd like to give you a little bit of a background of who I am, what I do, and what Invictus is all about. I think that would kind of set the context for where I come from with my perspective on health as a practice, right? I'm going to share the screen right now, if that's okay with everyone.
Yeah.
Right. So just to give a little background of myself, I've played multiple sports growing up. I studied mechanical engineering post that. And once I did mechanical engineering, I got into IT solutions, where I was designing large, multi-crore solutions, infrastructure solutions for the IT industry. I was largely part of systems designs for large data centers, virtualization, data storage, basically the works when it comes to IT. And Bangalore being the hub that it is for IT, the exposure itself gave me a broad understanding of how systems are built from the ground up, from a greenfield blank slate all the way to it being a $100 million setup, right? Post that, I reached a point where I had to make a decision of what I wanted to do with my life, right? As interesting as IT was, it was something that I didn't find much meaning in it for myself, and hence took a detour towards health, right? So it started off as a personal journey of mine where I wanted to discover more about my body. And I started off, if you look at my background as a mechanical engineer and then as an IT solutions architect, I went about figuring out what are the key factors that actually goes into optimizing health. So I started off with a physical journey, then moved on through some collaborations with my now wife and brother-in-law. We started something called as PHD, which is Potential Health Development. And we started off with preventative healthcare. Right, so that's where we started off. The journey of where we've reached, I'd like to cover. So just to give you a background of the kind of people that we've dealt with. Just to give you a background of the kind of people that we've dealt with. We've pretty much dealt with the who's who when it comes to sport in India. Some of them, which we've highlighted over here, where we have the rights for, but a lot of them we've worked with extensively for 4 to 5 years, where we handle everything about their lifestyle from end to end, whether they're traveling, whether they're staying at home, whether they're in camp, whether they're dealing with injuries that are long-standing, building the psychological system around it, the nutritional system around it, as well as giving them a holistic view of what they need for their personal well-being, and then translating that all the way to performance at an international stage. Right? We've also worked with the NSG in building their full-fledged high-performance system in Chennai, where we did a complete overhaul of their system and helped them plan what, with the resources they had, how would they best optimize their daily routines, as well as looking at the big picture, how to make sure that we minimize injuries in something like the NSG, but also making sure that they are prepared at any point in time to be deployed. We worked extensively with para athletes as well, of all categories. We've even helped a lot of them in the Asian Games as well in Jakarta. I was part of the weightlifting squad that went to Commonwealth. I was also part of Satish Shivangalingam, who won the gold medal in the Commonwealth in terms of injury rehab, as well as in terms of his performance training. We've worked with sports across the segment. We worked with all age groups, starting from the age of 7 all the way to 35, 40 for a professional athlete. But our unsung heroes and the silent contributors to a lot of our learning comes from our everyday people, comes from kids as well. A lot of our learnings do come from the way we train with kids, how to make it interactive, how to create a creative environment where they can express themselves through movement. At a senior segment, we do help a lot of clients that do have lifestyle issues, have degenerative diseases, chronic pain, the whole host of issues that come along with just leading a life that is highly stressful, and really not knowing where to start or stop, and where they felt the traditional healthcare system has failed them, right? So what I'd like to propose is not so much as something that is an alternative to the traditional healthcare system, but more as a complement to the traditional healthcare system. And as a thought, right, I'd like to divide the entire presentation into 3 parts. One is starting off with a problem statement, right? So these are some of the associations that we deal with in different capacities. Some of them are education institutes from Europe. A couple of them are education institutes in India as well. We do a lot of ideation with them on where the industry needs to go from a health perspective. We build curriculums for health sciences. We also partner with a lot of the NGOs, sports associations at various levels to help and educate athletes and coaches, as well as teachers. A big focus of ours is education. While we involved heavily at the ground level, we like to take that learning from that and then transfer it so that we can build a system that will not only benefit local entities, but also at a national level. Can we create a movement or an understanding where we can look at health differently? So I'm going to start off with health as a practice. Traditionally, we've always looked at health as something that is extremely important for our well-being and our family's well-being, as well as our society's well-being. But we always looked at it from a reactionary approach. What I mean by that is it was always someone else's responsibility to take care of our health. Whenever we'd fall sick, the first person that we'd call is a doctor. But we'd wait for the fact that we'd fall sick, wait for it to become to a point where we need to call somebody before we take action. Right? And the doctors, with the way the system is designed, are extremely competent at dealing with sickness, acute pain, but more as a band-aid and solving the symptoms and making sure that you are not critical. Right? So critical healthcare, the hospital and the traditional health systems have done a fabulous job. But when it's not critical, how do we handle it? How do we as individuals, as family members, as communities look at health, right? It's a very ad hoc, hearsay kind of system where I've read something in a magazine or my neighbors come and told me that he did something and that worked for him, or someone told me that kokum juice is something that is really good during the summers and I'm just going to have it, right? We're just going to go with a lot of what has worked for someone else should or may work for us. And that ends up being a practice that we do until we find the next fad or the next golden truth that is being propagated on social media or the newspaper as something that may apply to us, right? It's guesswork. At best, it is guesswork. And unless we measure what we're trying to change, all we're doing is guessing with our health until it slips to a point where the hospital system has to come into place. We do a bunch of tests, and what they will tell you is whether it is critical or are you just pass. And so if it's something that's critical, immediately everyone goes into action. But if you are just pass, you're not below the line where they can term you as sick. All they do is, they'll probably give you some supplementation and then send you on your way. Right? And I think that kind of approach to health, right, is very, very, like we are waiting for disaster to happen. We wouldn't accept children who are just pass, right, saying that, okay, fine, he just passed. Whereas in every other aspect of life, we're looking at how more can we optimize our health? How can we be the top 1% in society, in our families, in our neighborhoods, in our offices, everywhere we want to be the top 1%. But in a lot of cases, when we look at health, we're satisfied with just pass. Right? So that's a food for thought.
To simply put it, I would say like we're okay with not being sick, but we're okay with not working towards our health.
Absolutely. And if you see, look at the whole COVID pandemic situation. If anything, it has exposed that. Look at the people that were affected by the pandemic to a very large extent are people with comorbidities. The ones who are healthy, right? I'm talking about the true sense of healthy. I'm not talking about fitness, right? Fitness is not the same as being healthy. You can be extremely fit in an unhealthy way, right? And there are cases where athletes have gone and they are on the top shape. They're in the top 1% of the world when it comes to fitness. But when they got something like the COVID, it absolutely destroyed them for weeks, right? I know cases where some athletes have still not recovered after 6 months. By nature of their training and pushing their body to a point where it's unhealthy, it exposes you to these kind of threats. So the quote I'd like to start the entire presentation is, the goal of practice is always to keep a beginner's mind, right? We need to be inquisitive about our health. We need to be inquisitive about our bodies. We need to be inquisitive about the people around us, but also we need to be inquisitive about how we react with our environment around us, how we interact with it, right? So Shojin is a Japanese word that actually sums up the mind of a beginner. And I'll explain to it. I'll deep dive into this as we go through the presentation.
Yeah.
I'd like to start off with the problem statement, which is the system that we live in. So traditionally, like I said, the focus has always been on sickness as it being a matter of survival, right? We've always looked at what is the first and the most impending thing that is there as a society is survival. If we don't look at survival, then everything else that comes after it is irrelevant, right? So as a society, we've looked at putting a lot of emphasis on hospital systems, on doctors, on all of that. But then we still face the problem where we have a shortage of doctors. We have a shortage of around 2 million doctors that are in India. We have a shortage of 2 million doctors. And they don't foresee that being fulfilled anytime soon unless there's a drastic shift in the way we approach the education system in the hospital. Where do we go if we are unhealthy? Our whole idea of if we are unhealthy, we will go to a gym, right? When it comes to the hospital, we want the doctors to be the most experienced, most educated, the most highly qualified doctor that we can find when it comes to sickness, right? Understandably so. But if we are unhealthy, where do we go?
Yeah, that's a tricky question, I'm sure, for a lot of us here.
So we go to a gym, right? That's the most common thing. Even when I started off, I wanted to get healthier, I wanted to get fitter, I'd go to a gym.
Yeah.
Right.
Or
so
do any sports.
Often, or sports, like your idea of what will get you fitter, right? Very often misconstrued what is health and what is fitness. But our idea at that point in time, including mine, I'm as guilty of it as possible. I would go to a gym and say, I'm going to get fitter in the gym and hence I will be healthier. Who do we trust our health with when we go there?
A lot of times it's the trainer, or you go on YouTube and search for a video on how to do things.
So if you see the difference in what our expectation when our sickness is there, but when we're unhealthy, we will go to a person who, I'm not saying everyone, but we're also okay with someone who's just done a weekend course on what he needs to do with a person, and that's about it. But we're sick for probably I mean, if you're really, really unlucky, maybe 10% of your life, right? If you're lucky, maybe you'll be sick for maybe 2% of your life. For that 2%, we invest so much on infrastructure, on education, on everything. But if you're unhealthy, we're okay with anyone who's done a weekend course as well. And maybe if you're even better educated and well connected, you'll find someone with a slightly higher education and experience, but that comes at a much higher cost. So, I mean, if you're looking at health and sickness and where we'd ideally like to invest our time, our knowledge, our thought processes, wouldn't it be a more valuable asset to actually invest in places where it will take us from unhealthy to healthy, right? If you look at the right side where I put the graph, I mean, quality of life. If you look at it traditionally, we all expect to reach our peak quality of life at a certain age. Now it's expected to be between 25 and 35. Beyond that, the quality of life starts coming. Do we compensate with other things? Yes, we compensate with bigger cars, bigger houses. We compensate with more luxuries and all of that. But constantly, our quality of life is dropping and dipping. And the number of comorbidities that are there and health, lifestyle-related issues are only doubling every 5 years. Right? I'm not going to take the case of America, but America is how far a certain society has stretched it. India, thankfully, is not as bad, right? Owing largely to the traditions that we have, but also the kind of things that are disposable to us, right? Which is a credit that we were able to keep a lot of it in balance as well, but we're still heading down the same path. And if you look at the shaded path of it, I think that's where we are today as a society that's been hit by a pandemic.
So, tell me on like how you were mentioning about sickness and the whole and how we take gyms as our solution to fitness. But when I was in school, so I used to be like always into sports, but that didn't mean that I was living healthy, right? Because at that time it was eat whatever you get and play, and basically you're done for the day. So what are your thoughts on that? How do we do a course correction on that front? Because at that time you really don't know if you won't actually go to a gym.
So I mean, if you're playing sport, right, look at all the things that are given to you that you can have access to by playing a sport, right? From a physical level, from a cognitive level, from interpersonal skills, intrapersonal skills, all of those things are some extremely crucial to the health of an individual long term, right? You learn how to move your body, and that, I mean, I'll cover that also in the coming slides, but it plays a huge role in the way our brain development works, right? Problem solving is what we were designed to do. The better we get at problem solving, whether it is sport or academics, ideally we want to have it, side by side, where we have the theoretical knowledge on a wide variety of topics, but also we're doing high stress environments where we're doing problem solving. Eventually, when both of those come together is where we are prepared for a life that is optimized and where we can reach our fullest potential as individuals, right? And hence contribute back to society. Yeah. So, like I said, so our traditional health curve, I would say, was focused around sickness. What I would propose, right, and this is something that is already gaining a lot of traction, a lot of movement, exponentially in the last 1 year, right? While we do have a traditional health system that focuses on sickness, I think it's also important to have the value of organizations, and there are some really reputable organizations that work in preventative healthcare and have done long-term studies, cohort studies on what it takes to be, to make sure that you don't go into that sickness cave in the first place, right? Let's see how far we can go away from sickness. Living on the edge of sickness, it just takes one calamity, one stressful situation, one pandemic to make sure that you are slipping deeper and deeper into that rabbit hole. Healthy, right? So now that we are from unhealthy, where do we go? We need to go to healthy. What kind of places do we need to, what kind of people, what kind of environment do we surround ourselves to make sure we stay healthy, right? a lot of it will come through education. For us to stay healthy, it has to come through education. I'm talking about widespread education, and I'm talking about education at all ages. What do I mean by education in this scenario? I mean, what do we need to know as a child? As in physical education, what are we studying? Are we studying how to move? Are we studying how to read the signs in our body? Are we doing a lot of interoception, right? It's where as adults, we've already bridged that connection as kids, so that as an adult, it's something that we are very in tune with. That has largely changed in the last decade or so, where our connection to our body has been very, very disconnected. We rely a lot on technology. We rely on a lot of other people to basically tell us what's going on with our body. And fundamentally, that becomes an issue, right? Because again, whatever has happened in our body has already happened. By the time we reach the person who is probably the best person to tell you what it is, the timing is all off. We're only looking at points in time and may not be the actual truth that's going on in our body. Building that mind connection, body connection, is where we build the entire piece of where we can create a healthy, happy soul. And the last, and my favorite, and probably the one that I would like everyone to change the way that they look at their health, is health by design, right? We need to look at what our body was made for, right? We need to look at where our roots are. The Indian subcontinent is basically an amalgamation of many, many countries, many, many genetics, all put together, mixed and matched, all various languages. All of those things actually don't allow us to create a concrete health plan that works for everyone in India. Just the diversity of it does not allow you to create a nationwide plan. So for us to create a standard is very, very difficult, right? I would say near impossible. And no matter how well we do it, we're always going to miss a large section of society. So the way we need to look at health is based on an N is equal to 1. And that is a philosophy where every individual is an individual in his own right. And hence we need to figure out what works for that individual along with its partner, and from the partners, the offsprings, right? The children. So we need to look at each of them as a nuclear system that ultimately joins up to the greater society. There are common things that obviously join all of us together as humans, but also as Indians that we can take advantage of. But by and large, we need to know our own bodies. And if we know our own bodies and we know how to tune it and we know how to feed it, that itself will turn backwards and reduce the stress on everything right up to the traditional hospital systems who deal with sickness, and they're great at it. I mean, there's no two ways about it. India has some of the best medical institutions in the world, right? So why optimize or performance living? Like, performance, according to me, is for everyone, right? If you're not sick or unhealthy and you're not in survival mode, everybody wants to be a better version of ourselves, right? Everybody wants to be the top of their class. Everybody wants to be first in the race. Everyone wants to be a better husband, a better wife, a better mother, a better neighbor, a better friend. And to be able to touch all those boxes, what do we need? We need capacity, right? Because all of those are additional stressors on our nervous system, right? All of that puts some amount of pressure. A lot of it is good, intentional pressure. We know that we will grow from that pressure, provided we recover. Okay? But if not, then we start slipping from optimized living to healthy. From healthy, we slip to unhealthy. From unhealthy, we go to sickness, right? So let's have a look in life where, like the graph on the right, where the day we are born, we start exponentially growing until we reach a certain capacity or threshold that is sustainable. Beyond that, we realize that it's detrimental to our growth, right? It's not that capacity cannot be increased, but there is a rate of increment. Cross that, and then it starts becoming stress. And then let's maintain that high threshold. Let's maintain that high quality of life within ourselves and around us for as long as we can in life, till the day comes when eventually, life is unpredictable, things do change, but you have to be prepared. Can we be best versions of ourselves for as long as possible? Not a peak and then a crash, right? And the best people in the world, the highest performers know how to do that. They know how to hit a tempo, a certain intensity, and maintain it for the lifestyle that they want. Right? It doesn't mean that everybody's curve has to be like that of Elon Musk. Right? Set your own targets, set your own lifestyle, set your definition of what you would like as purpose for your life, and then tune your body as a vessel for it, your mind as a control mechanism for it.
Okay.
So since I've set the tone, I'd like to get into why. Why do we do what we do? As human beings, I mean, it's very important that we understand where we've come from evolutionarily. From an evolutionary standpoint, where we've come from. And we can't just ignore saying that now we are superior organisms in this world and we have mastered everything that is there in this earth. Now everything that has to go on and go forth is only extraterrestrial or quantum physics and all of that. Fundamentally, as an organism, we were made for what? Why do we move the way we do move? Why do we behave the way we behave? We have to go back to the roots of what we are and who we are as individuals, as human beings. So the number one thing that we've made for was survival. Right? I think what we've done better than every other organism in this world is survive. Right? And by nature of surviving, as a species, we've thrived. Not necessarily as individuals. Right? As individuals, we may not have thrived, but as a species, we survived because we ticked all the boxes. And I think that's hereditary. I don't think there's something that we take credit for or should take credit for. And I think we're also paying the price of taking credit for thriving as a species. Right? At the end of the day, people do fight. I mean, the world does fight back.
Yeah.
Right? So we can't think of thriving unless we cover the basic fundamentals of surviving. Right? I'm going to talk at a very individual level. If you're going through some kind of sickness, if your sleep is interrupted, if you have high stress job, or even if not a job, it's just that your day is highly stressed. You take care of the kids, you've got homework, you've got academics, you've got commitments in, say, music, you've got commitment in sport, you've got, a whole range of things, but you're not really taking that time to calm that nervous system down. What was traditionally a survival mechanism, which is a fight or flight, now with the computer screens, they're triggering fight or flight. Your phone rings, suddenly you're on alert, another fight or flight response, right? Everything that we have, bright blue lights, trigger that fight or flight response. So we are in that activated, highly strung, excited state for, I don't know, maybe 10 hours a day, 12 hours a day.
And right? Do you think that is also more when you're a child in school? Bache to, they're always running around and they keep playing. There's that, we see a lot of energy also in them. So do you think that is higher when you're younger, or how does that change over the years?
So honestly, having a child with a lot of energy, a lot of enthusiasm, and it come out in different ways, some of it at being mischievous, some of it where they're really focused and they're able to channel their energy. From an evolutionary standpoint, it's what they were designed to do. Boys were meant to be hyperactive and all of that, and it's how they would survive, how they would rough and tumble with other boys of their age. It's where they sharpen their inter and intrapersonal skills, but also where they get a lot of the tools that they need for survival as an adult, right? As a kid, it's in a very crude form, right? So it comes across as really brash behavior, uncontrolled, all of that, but it's their way of experimenting and outlet, right? And if you see the hormonal difference between boys and girls is why that you see there's such a stark difference. I'm not saying always, but I'm talking about in majority of things, there's such a stark difference in their behaviors as well, right? Boys being hyperactive is because they need that outlet, right? We take boys and put them in rooms and we expect them to sit for 8 hours without that huge energy release or that mental stimulation that they need, right? So we have to work with the way our bodies were designed to be able to get the most out of these boys, irrespective of whether they are using it for, constructive or destructive. It's all part of their personalities. Neither is good or wrong. It's their experiments on themselves, on the people. Unfortunately, a lot of the time is on the teachers as well, testing their patience, right? But we'll come to that also on how to handle those kind of stresses as well.
So
And-
basically, you're saying it's a mix of survival and movement.
Yeah, movement is how our brain develops, right? Like
Yeah.
the two main things that our brain, our nervous system is tuned for and prioritized is survival and movement. Like if we didn't move before we had this commercialization and capitalism and everything being available, we wouldn't survive. So everything was either survival and all the instincts that come with survival, and then it was move because you had to move from place to place. If you had a predator coming, you have to move fast. If you don't have food in one place, you have to move. You have to be able to track. You have to be able to sense your environment. Okay, is it going to rain? Is it not going to rain? What's the sun like? Is it a hot day? Do I stay under shade? Do I get out and hunt? All of those movements is where it comes from. Right? So primary functions of a brain: survival, movement.
Yeah.
And that comes to my third point, neuroplasticity. Right? Everyone knows, or does anyone want to give a shot at what they think is neuroplasticity? Or
Yeah, I think we'll leave that to the audience.
Question?
If anyone knows. Yeah, it's a question for the audience. Anyone wants to raise their hands? किसी को पता है क्या है neuroplasticity? I'm going to scan the chats till then. Varun, I think you should give the answer.
okay, done. So
Okay,
neuroplasticity.
Oh,
Sorry?
we have someone.
Yes, sir, I think so that neuroplasticity is the thinkings of our brain, how they think, how they understand the world around it, how they do actions, all of that.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, that's a great attempt, Chaitanya. Right, but neuroplasticity is basically our brain's ability to adapt to any stimuli. And it can be an external stimuli, it can be a positive stimuli, it can be a negative stimuli, it can even be substance abuse, right? Like alcohol, right? Our brain adapts to whatever we feed it, right? If it's in movement, if it's education, if it's studies, our brain is constantly adapting to it, right? And ultimately, whatever we do is how we're training our brain. You want to use that capacity of neuroplasticity to create positive habits, great, your brain will support you. You want to use your brain to create negative habits, great, your brain will support you. Whatever you decide to do and everything that you have ever done and everything that you ever will do and will become is because of your brain and its ability to be neuroplastic. Right? It's what makes us adaptable as a species in any environment. It makes us what makes us the most dominant species over there, where irrespective of the circumstances, we are able to find ways to survive, adapt, and then thrive, provided we've reduced the threats that are there. The one thing that reduces the capacity for neuroplasticity and adaptation is threat. The more threat there is, the more we are looking for comforts. So we don't take care of the threats that we put in our body on a regular basis. Our brain actually starts losing its capacity to be adaptive. Right? So we are ourselves halting our evolution and growth. So then the question comes, how? Right? How do we do what we do? Like I said, the brain is the state. Right? So what do we need to do with our brain? Like, how do we make sure that there is constant, consistent evolution of our brain and our personalities and ourselves? So it starts with food, right? Being the fundamental fuel that our brain uses without eating the right kind of food, right? I am going to emphasize on right kind of food. And by right, I mean, it's all about timing, right? Now, no food is good or bad if you understand the consequences of it and what are you eating it for. If on an odd day, you're highly stressed and you need to eat a burger on an odd day, there are benefits of it. If you want to eat an ice cream, there are benefits of it. It does help reduce, on a short acute basis, it does help reduce your cortisol levels, right? So it is, I mean, that's why you see people with a lot of stress end up junk eating a lot more, because it does affect the nervous system. It does allow them to handle a lot of the cortisol levels that are there and other catabolic activities that are happening in the body just by that thing, but then it becomes a survival mechanism. Activities that are happening in the body just by that thing, but then it becomes a survival mechanism. I'm going to keep getting my body stressed, and then I'm going to eat junk food, and then I'm going to create more stress, and then go eat junk food. Right? So we're rewarding stress by adding more junk food to it, and that's when we start going down the unhealthy path. Nothing wrong with it, but are we overdoing it? Is my question. Put healthy food into it. You put enough amounts of it. You give your body the right, body and brain the right kind of fuel that it needs, and now you're optimizing it. You're not doing a stopgap arrangement with your health. You're kind of finding the right ways to fuel it so that you don't have to worry about negating the harmful effects of junk food. The second is oxygen. How many of us actually take time out to slow our breathing down, focus on breathing? How many of us actually use our nose to smell things? How many of us make sure that we don't have both our noses blocked, right? Although it might look inconsequential at that point in time on a daily basis, but let me put a food for thought for you, right? Since we're on the topic of fueling. Your nose activates a large part of your brain, right? So when we say the 80-20 principle, where we're using only 10-15% of our brain in daily life, and the remaining 80% is still left undiscovered. That 80% is not that it's left undiscovered. That 80% is responsible for your survival. It is responsible for all your autonomic responses, but it is also responsible for a lot of your unconscious actions, right? So that's where the 80% comes. Your olfactory sense, which is your nose, is activating a certain part of your brain that actually triggers emotions as well, right? So if you're not able to open both sides of your nose, and nose activates, as in if my right nostril activates my right side of the brain and my left nostril activates the left side of my brain, what happens if one side of my nose is blocked? I have reduced capabilities in one side of my brain, and we're not even thinking about those things. We're not looking at how to optimize our senses and interactions with our environment to get the most out of our brain. And then there's movement. I think pretty much everyone can understand what's going on in the movement picture. But yeah, I mean, I think we are going in reverse, right? Actually, I wanted to put this in reverse, where the guy is actually running backwards until he goes and sits. Everything in our life right now is becoming more and more stationary rather than more and more movement, right? If you look at the on an average, what kind of variation that we have in daily life, a lot of it sit, stand, lie down. Right? It's various forms of sitting, standing, and lying down. How many of us experiment with movement, whether it's yoga, whether it's dance, whether it is martial arts, sport? As kids, we do, right? And if you see that there's also a big difference in kids and how open their mind is, primarily because they're experimenting all the time. Like the things and the rate at which we learn as kids, as adults, it starts diminishing. Sorry, Ankit.
No, I think, that obviously, like, fuel is the main driving force, whereas nutrition, breathing, and I think it's like, अगर अपनी गाड़ी में आप खराब पेट्रोल तो नहीं डालोगे, आप खराब पेट्रोल डालोगे, it is going to like not work properly. और सही चीज पेट्रोल डालोगे तो गाड़ी ठीक चलेगी. So I think that's something that is very important for us to learn at a young age.
It's like if you have to go for a 300-kilometer drive, you're going to say that, okay, if I don't want to put full tank, I'm going to put only for half the way, and the remaining half we'll figure out how to reach there.
Yeah.
Right? Then you're going to have to call a tow truck, or you're going to have to push it, or you're going to do all the other nonsense. But whatever idly taking you 6 hours is now taking 14 hours, 15 hours, and you may or may not reach.
And that takes a toll on you. So similarly, it takes a toll on our health. So I think we should start this, concept of understanding nutrition, breathing, and movement at a very young age, and especially for people who are going into sports.
I mean, even life, right? I mean, it's like the reason why I'm bringing it here, because it's a core fundamental thing of being a human being, to understand these three concepts. Without this, whatever we put as an output is just diminished capacity. Whether we are into sports or, I mean, all of us want to be high functioning individuals, right?
Yeah.
We want to thrive. We want to thrive. We just don't want to be on the brink of survival.
Yeah. So I think performance without compromising on health is key at every level, whether it's your studies, whether it's your sports.
Performance is a resultant of optimized health.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It is not one or the other. It is actually on the same curve. It's just that once you optimize your health far enough, I mean, it has to go to performance. I mean, it's
Yes.
it's a resultant of good planning, good experimentation, good results. You move to performance. It's not performance and health are two different things. And if you do performance, we have to neglect health, or do health, neglect performance. We have to optimize health to a point where it is performance.
Yeah.
So
So let's
we're
move
looking
on.
at
I think,
polishing.
yeah. So let's just move on the slide, because I think we also have to take questions.
Done.
From
How
all
much
the-
time do we have? Then I'll speed it up.
We've got a couple of minutes.
Okay, cool. Then I'll be much faster, right? Important concepts to also understand is something called as a stress bucket. Anything and everything that we do in life that does not reduce stress is only increasing stress, right? And there is a limit to how much our body can handle stress without us having to do something about it. And generally, that body, once the stress is something that it can't handle, it looks for ways to signal it to you, whether it's in the form of pain, headache, sleeplessness. All of those things are signs of your body not being able to cope with the stress, and hence is to giving you signs to slow down. Right?
Yeah.
There's something called as a concept of minimal effective dose, right? Even something that is good for you, there's a limit to which, it is good for you. You start overdoing it, and then you go down the other side of the bell curve. Right?
Yeah.
Variety in evolution is the spice of life. It applies over here as well. Know when you've hit the ideal zone, and once you figure out that you're dropping, it's time to change. Right?
Yeah.
Change the stimulus, change the environment, keep things fresh for your brain so your brain doesn't get stale. And balance, right? Whatever you do that adds stress, you need to have another practice that reduces stress. If you're going to keep filling the bucket without emptying it, that's when it leads to problems. If you're going to play high intensity sports, or you have a really stressful life, take time during the day to be able to de-stress, whether it's meditation, whether it's a breathing practice, anything that empties the bucket so that you can put more things in it, right? And make it a practice, which means you're putting it in, you're taking stress out, you're putting stress in, taking stress out. Don't wait for everything to reach a point where it's too far to go and now you need to take a month off in some holiday destination just to defrag. Right? It's not sustainable.
And balance is critical in whatever we do at every age as well.
I mean, we think we have more control as we age, but I feel that it just gets more and more chaotic.
Yeah, that's true.
Our expectations from life increases, which brings me to the concept of neurobiomechanical physiology. Everything affects everything, right? The way you think affects physiology and your movement. The way you move affects your brain and physiology. And physiology obviously affects your brain and your movement. Without looking at health through a lens where everything is affected, we're actually just distributing everything into buckets of science just for the sake of understanding, but really not bringing it back together to make it valuable as a collective. The human body is the human body. For the human body, there's no separation between all of these. So when we approach health, we need to look at it as a combined effort. We need to look at, okay, can I do 10% here, 10% here, 10% here, and I'll probably get 70% improvement. Right? You're looking at compounding interest. You're not looking at, I'm going to do 10% here, 10% here, 10%. Even if you do 30% in movement, actually you're not getting 30%. You're getting far less than it because you're ignoring the other two.
Yeah.
Right? So coming down to what we can do as individuals, I think we need to assess. We need to know what is the thing that actually is a rate limiting factor for our health. What is the rate limiting factor for the most important things that we want to do in life? Right? Is it energy that is holding it back on life? Is it that we're not able to maintain our moods in a consistent manner when we should? Right? We should have fairly stable moods and fairly straightforward brain waves. We're very consistent. What is it that we're missing from life to get the most out of it? Use that as a measure. It doesn't have to be limited to anything that is there on this slide, but whatever is important to you and you can measure, right? Use that as a tool. Use that as a guiding compass to help you design your life that you want. Right? And it can be anything because everything is connected. Choose any one of these things if you don't know what to do. But if you do have something that really matters to you, pick that and then start engineering your life to be able to improve that one factor. And it translates everywhere. Like you will see that by trying to do that and just creating one experiment on your life, you start seeing that it starts affecting every other aspect of your life.
Yeah.
Coming to my more or less the last slide, what do we need to do as a society for different age groups, right? And this is something that, I mean, I've obviously shrunk this down to something that we can fit into this conversation. But as children, we need to make sure that physical and movement education is there for all ages. It is progressive in nature. It stimulates them cognitively as well, rather than like, I mean, I teach exercise for a long while, and it was just learning how to do the same movements better. But what I saw that there was a decline in performance. Right? If you don't consistently add a new stimulus or a challenge that stimulates the brain cognitively, there is decline in performance that ends happening. Competition, right? Although we prepare them for competition is healthy, right? If done in the right way, in the right environment, is extremely healthy as an experiment to know whatever processes you've done has worked out. If it's not worked out, what's more that can be done? It isn't as much about winning or losing as the process of figuring out how to win, right? Or what is it that you did that made you lose? Positive behavioral patterns, right? We need to be able to reward positive behavioral patterns to a point where we don't need to reward it. Right? You're creating a habit in children, but if it's always for a reward, is where you're looking at them not making it. They're only doing it if someone's watching. Otherwise, if no one's watching, then there's no value in it. We need to detach the value from that. A wide variety of stress. I think we already do that to a very large extent, but also wide variety of controlled stress, right? Not too much in one area. We're trying to create well-rounded individuals that can adapt to whatever happens in life.
Yeah.
Right. The reality today is not the reality of tomorrow, and reality of last year was definitely not the reality of this year.
So you're saying that stimulus also then it has to evolve through as we age, right? Like there's like the learning that you get during your adolescence, then you get refinement as an adult, and you mentioned maintenance as old age.
Exactly.
So it's like a full circle.
As we age, it's about maintenance, because we want to be able to stimulate ourselves more to be able to, maintain. Like you need to stimulate to maintain at that age, right? Because the body and the brain is declining far more rapidly than any of the other phases. So if we can find ways to stimulate our brains and be excited, I mean, that's the secret to longevity.
Well, that's amazing. So should we take some questions now, Varun?
Sure. I mean, I'm done anyway, so.
Okay, so I will, give the floor to Mrs. Gupta and Mrs. Vora to, if we have any questions for Varun.
Varun has been wonderful in explaining to us that, and reminding us for that matter, that health is wealth, and also reminds us of an old saying that if wealth is lost, nothing is lost, but if health is lost, then a lot is lost. And definitely, जितने हमारे इतने सारे बच्चे यहाँ बैठे हैं, I can see them on screen, and also these parents who have taken out time. This is one evidence, one proof that how important you have understood that health is for our benefit. So taking it forward, Varun, could you please also explain that, Corona time hai, we all understand that sports करने चाहिए, exercise करनी चाहिए, health को अपनी practice बनाना चाहिए, but इस time पे हम क्या बच्चों को ऐसी tips दे सकते हैं, कुछ ऐसा बता दें जिससे कि हमारे बच्चे घर पे बैठे हुए ऐसा कुछ करें जिससे एक प्रैक्टिस बनती रहे, उनकी हेल्थी हैबिट्स क्रिएट हो जाएं. थर्ड वेव ने पहले ही हमें बहुत डराया हुआ है ऑलरेडी. सो हाउ टू टेक इट फॉरवर्ड व्हाइल वी आर इन आवर सिक्योर्ड एटमॉस्फेयर ऑफ आवर हाउसेस, एंड हाउ शुड पेरेंट्स आल्सो मोटिवेट देम? If we can have some inputs on that.
So I'm going to take this. I'm going to answer this in a threefold answer. Maybe it's too long, but I'll try and shorten it as much as I can. Yes, sport is not there, but sport is ultimately gamification, right? If we can gamify things that are there in daily tasks around the house, whether it's movement. I mean, a lot of times with the young kids, I just give them a video of a dance or of some movement or anything, and I say, okay, break it down. Tell me what you see and tell me whether you can recreate that movement. Or I'll give them things like, okay, take this ball, start juggling it, one hand, then put another ball, then put a third ball, then do it off the wall. So every time the process of trying to figure out how do I break this, how do I figure out this puzzle that it is, I'm actually stimulating my brain as well. Now, if I can make them do the same thing standing on one leg, I'm adding another skill onto it. And this skill is transferable to majority of the skills that they play in sport anyway. If I want to make it more intense, I can add something like, okay, go run up and down and then do it. Right? Rather than making it physical exercise that is mundane and saying, okay, we have to do this to lose weight. I think losing weight should be a consequence of good practice, not the focus. Right? Losing weight should be a consequence of healthy eating and food that you enjoy. Right? If you're going to eat food that you don't enjoy, doesn't matter how healthy it is, it's only stressing your body out and stressing your brain out. You're not going to have a healthy relationship with food. You're either going to go the one extreme where you're going to undereat or go the other extreme where you're going to overeat. So where's the balance over there? It's great to be able to sit as a family and work on relaxation together. And it's a great bonding experience. There are teams at the highest level in NBA that actually sat together before a big match, right? And meditate together till their heartbeats would match, right? And that's when they knew everybody was in sync. So not only have you worked on relaxation as an individual, you've also bonded with your family to be able to create a better family and environment as well. And video games actually used the right way is a great learning and teaching mechanism. It was designed for that. It was designed to hold the child's imagination, their focus and everything. But what we want to use those tools for is us as parents that have to figure out whether we want to use it to play PUBG, which is really not creating, you are still gathering skills, right? I'm not saying that you don't gather skills, but is it the kind of skills that would help them thrive in the life that they want to do? I mean, if they want to be a professional gamer, sure. I mean, that there is a valid industry right now where you can be a professional gamer. But if not, what are the skills that they do need that I can use the same tool? And I don't have to fight with the kids and tell them you have to study nothing. I've just taken the same tool that is a distraction and now taken that and made an attraction and saying, here, solve this problem. I mean, games are just problem solving. What problems do we want them to solve, and how do they go about it? Use everything that is there in the house, the environment as well, to create that room for experimentation, making mistakes, winning, losing, that dopamine hit whenever you want, right? But make it interesting. That's the thing about kids. If it's not interesting, it's punishment. If it's punishment, they're not learning.
Yes, very true.
Yeah, very well said, Varunji. Thank you so much. In fact, when we are while we are online, we also try to break our sessions in between, and teachers just have a small routine or some stretching, some interesting clapping or something like that, so that children come back to class and wake up. So
True.
I'll now give the leave it to Vora ma'am, please, if you have any questions.
Yeah, Varun, I wanted to ask, in this pandemic, when children are at home, of course, you've told so many games and so many other things which we can involve. But, they are here with us, and when they are here with the teachers in school, like, online classes are going.
Facebook पे
Sorry? Am I audible?
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am,
yes,
ma'am.
yes, you are.
Sorry,
ma'am.
Mrs. Vora, I was my mic came on.
Okay, no worries. Yeah, so yes, then I want to know, they are sitting in front of screen for say about 3 to 4 hours, and eyes is also one of the concerns in that case. Can we do something about eyes also, because that is also another part of your healthy living, and you need to take care of your eyes as well. So what can we do for that? Can we do?
I'm actually very glad you brought this topic up, because
Sorry?
I think I'm actually very glad that you brought this topic up.
Yeah.
Right? A big part of where even sport is heading is basically stimulating the 5 senses.
Yes.
Right? Now we've reached a point where everyone's just looking at the screen and the eyes are overworked, but all the other senses are not being and every sense is attached to a different part of the brain.
Yeah.
Right? Some for creativity, some for inhibition, some for things, but every sense is important in creating that personality. Now what we're doing is seeing, and all we're doing is more or less just looking at a stationary target.
Absolutely.
So the stimulation, I mean, if you look at how advertisements are done, is there's constantly things moving, and that's what keeps us attracted to it, right? They hack that reflex in our brain where something is constantly moving, and hence we are paying attention.
Yeah.
But a lot of times when we're not looking at anything and we're just looking at a stagnant image, after a couple of seconds, our brain is like, that's no longer a threat. I don't need to pay attention.
Yeah. Yeah.
So one is concentration is really hard. But what can be done is, I mean, there are a lot of things that you can do for the eyes. Like a lot of things that I do for the professional athletes now is a lot of eye training. Yes, we do narrow focus and we do convergence where we're looking at one thing, but also to be able to sit back and broaden your view, to be able to focus on your peripheral vision, to be able to focus on different parts of the screen so that we're using different parts of the eye muscles as well, right? So just give you a fun fact. So your occipital lobe takes around 20% of your brain.
Mm-hmm.
Your eyes are responsible for stimulation in 80% of your brain because eye stimulates all the different parts of the brains as well.
Yes. Okay.
Right. But if you want your eyes to relax, one is ice packs are great, right? To make sure that the filter on your screen is set to red light filter so that you don't have the blue screen that's constantly hitting you.
Okay.
There are eye yoga exercises that work really great.
Mm-hmm.
Right, in relaxing the eyes and all of that. There are eye massages where you work on the cavities around the eye, on the facial, going around here, going up to the forehead, making sure that thing. There's also where you cup your hands, cover your eyes, and you relax your eyes until you feel those, you know, when you close your eyes, you're looking at a bright screen for really long and you close your eyes and there's white all around, and then it becomes smaller white dots and then it becomes a blank thing. So you're resetting your eyes and refocusing your attention as well. Another quick tip I'll give you is if you can get the kids to stimulate other senses as well while the class is going on, whether it's auditory, but auditory means it has to be a change from what is going on. Not if someone's talking, for it to be an auditory stimulus, it has to be different from what is being going on. The same thing with visual, the same thing with taste, nose, touch. All of these are 5 senses that actually work really well in relaxing the eyes as well.
Yeah.
It's taking the focus away from that one sense. And you will see there is a huge amount of cognitive benefits of stimulating all 5 senses. But yeah, relaxing the eyes, maintaining the eyes is crucial.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much. That was really so nice of you. And it's so well. In between the gaps of the school, we can always just do these sort of exercises so that.
Sorry, ma'am, I'm actually losing you a lot in the voice quality.
Yeah, Mr. Vara, you're not audible.
Yeah, I get network.
I think there's some network issue, ma'am. So your voice is.
Yeah. I think I'll have to go out of house and then speak to you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we're audible now. Yes.
Yes, because inside the house there is a lot of network issue at our place.
I can imagine, yes.
Okay. So this was a thing. Yeah. Thank you so much for this insight, and I'm sure we can tell our teachers, we can guide our teachers, to do these sort of exercises in between the sessions, and I'm sure this will really help our children. So
great.
Thank you.
And yes, whatever you said, what I feel, health is an investment.
True.
The more you invest in it, the better results you will get.
Absolutely.
So, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it was really, you have taken out so much of time and given us so much of insight. And I'm sure children must have, really learned a lot from this session. So thank you very much, Mr. Varun. It was really wonderful listening to you. And we would like to have you more often so that we can listen to you. And that will be really great on your part. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I mean, thank you for the opportunity more than anything else to be able to reach kids and principals and parents from across India. It's a great platform, and I must commend the entire team on the execution and organizing. And it is not easy to get so many people on a platform, especially one more screen, but still to be able to achieve it. I thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. And thank you, Ankit. Thank you so very much for moderating the session so very nicely.
Thank
It
you, Mrs.
was
Varun.
wonderful. It was really wonderful. And of course, I would like to thank our KK Heartcare Foundation also. You know, that is a platform which is bringing all of us together, and we are able to interact with each other and, you know, gaining so much of information from all the eminent personalities like you. So thank you, KK Heartcare Foundation also, and my colleagues here, my parents, teachers, and students. Thank you so very much, all of you. Thank you very much.
Great. Thanks, man. Thanks, guys. It was a pleasure.